Hello, Renata. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and spend a little bit of time with us to talk about the way you do risk assessment. I'm really hoping that you can share a little bit about your personal experience of risk assessment and how you go about things, and then just share a little bit about how you feel about that process as well. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm just wondering why you think risk assessment is important when you're working in family daycare.
Why is it important? We work on our own. Safety is a big thing. Safety in our environment, safety when we go on excursions, safety when the babies are sleeping. Even when we're crafting, like, if we're doing a science experiment or something, working with tools, perhaps, it's all safety. Risk assessments keep us safe. It's for our benefit as
I
well as the
agree. And
children.
it's
Yeah.
interesting that you raised that, that you work on your own, because I think in family daycare, the risk assessment and the risks are actually very different to what they are in a centre-based service. So it is really important that we think about this in our own context, because your risks might be different from somebody else's risks as well, because your family daycare service is different to somebody else's. So that's a
That's
really
right.
important thing for us to talk about. So you talked about a lot of things like using tools and going out and doing all sorts of things. Does doing risk management mean that you don't do anything risky with children?
In my opinion, absolutely not. I think sometimes if people aren't familiar with doing risk assessments, they can be a little bit frightened by it. Once you give it a go, and you can always ask your management team for support if you're kind of
Mm,
not sure where to start, or you can speak to your educator peers who maybe do are confident in their risk assessments,
yeah,
and you start somewhere. The more you do it, the more confident you get, and the more, I guess, you gain an eye for potential risks. So you want to make sure you cover them all so that it allows us to maintain compliance.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know,
So can
yeah.
you talk to me about the kinds of things that you do in your service that people might think are risky with children?
We do a lot of community connections. We do a lot of excursions. We love excursions. Our service is known in our local community for the excursions and the extracurricular activities that we attend. So we tend to attract those kinds of families in our service. So I need to be ready with my risk assessments at all times, and they have to be thorough
Yeah,
because that's what protects me.
yeah.
We all pay, all the educators pay insurance. Insurance is nothing if you're not compliant. So the risk management has to be, the assessment has to be thorough.
Yeah.
And then you can pretty much do what do and explore with the children lots of things. You have to comply with your scheme policies. We have to comply with regulations. We're bound by those.
Yeah.
Um, and it's up to your scheme to support you with those risk assessments.
But I know you have a bush play
We
program.
do, yes.
And so with that comes a whole range of risks. What are some of the specific risks that you would see as potential risk, I guess, when you're thinking about your bush play program?
Well, firstly, it's a natural environment. It's not a man-made environment, so you're exposed to nature.
And it's
Uh,
unpredictable, isn't
that's
it?
right.
Yeah.
The bush, the animals that come with nature, the unlevel ground, rocks, twigs, splinters, snakes,
Yeah.
all sorts of things. With our program, our Bush Play School program, we have an amazing educator that facilitates it, and she creates activities in this bush setting. So we have things like real saws, and we have hammers, and potentially things that are quite risky. Our role is to support the children to use them safely.
And is that why you have risk assessment? So you're thinking, I want these children to use all these amazing tools and have these adventures out in nature and do amazing craft and do amazing art activities. But those risks don't stop you from doing that. So a lot of people often think a risk assessment is to say why you shouldn't do something. But really, what you're saying is a risk assessment helps you to do things
Yeah,
that people would
absolutely.
think are
And
risky.
the benefits the learning benefits completely outweigh um, the having to do the risk assessment. It is a big job, and it does take some time and some thought, and it's quite a layered process,
Yeah.
but it's worth it, because once you've done it and you're out there, you're ready, and you're prepared for things. If something was to go wrong, you're prepared for it. You've minimized all the risks that you've pointed out. So it's definitely worth it. The children love it. Oh, look, I could not expose my children to the experiences they get in the bush setting. I can't expose them to that in my home environment.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
Special. And so you said, it's time consuming. We know that paperwork can be really consuming.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do it? Do you handwrite it? Do you type it up? How do you do it? And where do you keep them?
Good question. A bit of both. Mainly, I handwrite them because I just find that it's easier to handwrite. But we're also now transversing into computer online stuff, and that way it's all on in the system. And every year we can look at it, we can assess it. Because we have to reflect and we have to reassess. Has anything changed? Are there any new potential hazards out there? If it's the same, well, then we don't have to really manipulate it too much. We don't have to add anything to it. So then it's all on file. We don't have to rewrite the whole thing. It's there. It's typed up. It's
And
easier.
it is easier. And
Yeah,
I think, like you, I'm a bit of a handwriter. So
yeah.
I would tend to write because I think it's really lovely to involve the children and families in that process as well. And
Oh, they
sometimes
do. They
when you
do.
when you're handwriting something, you can
Yeah,
ask the children, what do you think are
yeah,
the things that we need to be looking for,
yeah.
and collect that information. Is that something that you do? You do that
Yeah. Oh,
processing with the
yeah. With
children
that,
and
with
families?
the bush kinder one in particular, the children decided that they wanted to, because we had a discussion. What would happen if you were scared? What would happen if you got lost? We're in the bush. What would you do? And one of the children suggested that we use my emergency whistle, because when we do our emergency
Right.
drills, I use the whistle. And I thought, well, you know what? That's a great idea. So we went ahead and we purchased 4 whistles, and they were really excited because they came up with the idea and we discussed it, and we had to
So
talk
great.
about the importance of using it only in an emergency. And
Yeah.
we had it around us, and we kept it safe, and we put it in our little waterproof bib drill pants or
Yeah.
whatever they are, and they keep it in there, and they know not to use it only if it's an emergency. And that way it's a safety thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah,
think, that might not work for other people, but it works for you and for the children and the families that you're working with. And I think that that's the message that we're really trying to share this evening, is that risk assessment is a really individual process. And there will be some risk assessments that are similar and the same to your colleagues and that you can
yeah.
share. I'm sure you share your risk assessments with people that you work with and they share theirs, and sharing ideas. Is
We all
that
learn
something
from each
that
other.
you've done in the
Yeah,
past and sort of said, how did you write a risk assessment about
yeah.
that? Or I've never had a child with anaphylaxis before. I don't really know how to write a risk assessment for morning tea when we share food and we have a child with
Well, that's exactly
anaphylaxis.
right. Yeah.
And somebody else might have one. Is that something you've done before, shared with
uh
other people and tapped into
Absolutely.
their plans and got ideas and suggestions from them?
Yes, we do. Because we work by ourselves, don't we? We can't. We need to be able to bounce off somebody. We need to be able to talk to our colleagues. If not our colleagues, we'll talk to your manager, your CDO. Talk to people and learn. Do some training, gain some confidence, because it's really worth it. It really is worth it. My parents trust me. My families in my service, they trust me because they've seen the depth of my risk assessments, and they're elaborate, and they're thorough, and so they trust me. They've got no qualms.
That's so great. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Renata. You've been
Oh, thank you.
such a joy to talk to. We really appreciate you
You're
taking the
welcome.
time. And
You're welcome.
thank you so much for spending your time talking to us about what you do and inspiring other people to, make friends with risk assessments. Because I think the way you've
Yes,
spoken about it has really given us an opportunity to think about how much they benefit us, as well as the children and the things that we can do in our program. So thank
yes,
you
I
so
agree.
much for your
Yeah.
time. I really
Thanks
appreciate
for
it.
having me, Karen.